continue. So today we're going to be working with color theory again. We're going to be dyeing 6 pieces of fabric using the Itajime technique. This time we're going to be focusing on value, and we're going to be making 3 different values of 2 different dyes. We're going to be making a full strength dye and 2 lighter versions of that. Now, if we were working with paint, we would be adding white to the paint to create these lighter versions. But since we're working with dye and we don't have white dye, we have to dilute the dye solution. So that's what we're going to do. Seems I'm having trouble with my chat from my end, but we'll just leave it at that. So I have 2 colors of dye we're going to be working with. We're going to be working with the secondary orange and violet colors. Now these are the pre-mixed colors from the dye manufacturer because I had a request to do these colors last week. So that's what we're going to do. I've already mixed the dye up, and I mixed up 3/4 cup of dye using 3/4 cup of water and 3/4 tablespoons of dye. And I will dye 1 piece of fabric the full string, and then I will dilute the dye for the other 2 values. So let me go ahead and move over to the overhead camera and I'll show you what we're going to do. But before I do, I want to start off like I always do and show you how to fold the fabric. Now some of you have probably seen this before, but for those who haven't, I'm going to do it again. This is a fat quarter of fabric, so it's at 18 by 24 inches. And all of the folds start this way. Right now we're doing the square fold, but they all start the same way. I'm going to fold the fabric in half, so I have the long edge facing my body. I'm going to fold it in half lengthwise. And that gives me a piece now 9 by 24 inches wide. And now I'm going to take this raw edge and fold it back to the fold line. Turn it over. Good morning, Virginia. For some reason, I can't post in the chat. I don't know why, but I see you. Thanks for being here. I'm going to try something and see if this will help. Okay, well that seems to be better. Whatever I did helped. Now I can post in the chat. So we're going to be doing the value that we talked about last week, Virginia. And I'm just showing right now how to fold the fabric. So, and I know you've seen this, but just in case there's someone here who's not. This is 18 by 24 inches. I'm going to take the 24 inch and it's aligned with my body and fold it in half. And now it's 9 by 24 inches. I'll take this raw edge and fold it back so that it aligns with the folded edge, and then flip it over and do the same thing. So now I have a 4.5 by 24 inch piece of fabric that's been accordion folded like a fan. The next step is to fold it, accordion fold it this way to the same width to the 4.5. So I just keep folding it like a fan, 4.5 inches wide. So we end up with a stack of fabric, 4.5 by 4.5. And I'm going to put this in the soda ash while we work on the other pieces. And I'll just throw that in over there. And come back over here, and we're going to start with our orange. So this is strong orange. It's pre-mixed from the manufacturer. And I've already mixed it up, and I used 3/4 cup of water and 3/4 teaspoons of dye. So I'm going to dye 1 piece to full strength, and the other 2 I'm going to delete a bit. So what I have in these cups, I have 4 tablespoons of dye in these cups, and I will go back and delete these. So I've got my fabric already pre-folded. I'm going to be clamping them all the same direction because I think it would be easier for us to see the differences in the color if they're all the same. I want to put my gloves on before I start working with the dye. Otherwise, I'll have orange and purple hands. I'll move this out of the way so I don't get dye on it. And I'm actually going to start with the lightest value. So I'm going to take one of these cups and I'm going to add another 4 tablespoons of water to it. So this will be the lightest value. And I have some water here. And hopefully I can get all of this in this cup. Okay, just barely, but I did it. So let me move all of this other stuff out of the way. So this has been diluted with just as much water as there is dye. So 4 tablespoons of dye and 4 tablespoons of water. That should give us a fairly light value. So I'm going to go ahead and clamp the fabric. And as I said, I'm going to clamp all of these the same way with the same type of resist piece so that they will be similar in nature and we should be able to see the difference in the color. Let's see. These are just paint sticks and I'm just going to clamp it off center. I want to have a lot of area that's covered with the dye. Grab my clamps. So, looks like I'm still streaming. So this is the first one. Put it on this tray. And I'm just going to use the pipette to apply this dye to the fabric. So the application process is no different. And just make sure I get plenty of dye in between the folds of the fabric. And let me know if you have any questions. So even when making a lighter value like this, I start with the full strength dye and just dilute the dye that I'm going to apply. And if I'm doing that, I know I don't have to make up a full 1 cup of dye. I can make up less. And in this situation, I didn't even make a full 1 cup because I knew I wasn't going to use it all. So say hi in the chat. I see someone else has come on. So go ahead and say hi and welcome and thank you for coming today. I'm just going to make sure I get into the folds. And I started with the lightest value here because I'm just going to use the same pipette. And if I had started with the darker one, I would have contaminated it, I guess. It probably wouldn't have made a difference, but I just kind of like to work a little systematically. So this is the strong orange from Pro Chemical and Dye. Very, very bright orange. And this is sold as the secondary orange color. Okay, well that looks like I've got it in there pretty good. Okay, yes, Virginia, I will do that. Let me put this aside. Okay, Virginia, so in the bottle here, I have my full strength dye. So this is the same proportion that I've been using before. I mixed 3/4 cup of water, 3/4 tablespoon of dye. In the lighter cup, I put 4 tablespoons of dye in it. and I put an additional 4 tablespoons of water. So that's going to give us our lightest value. I don't need this anymore. So this is going to give us, this next cup is going to give us our medium value. I have 4 tablespoons of dye in here, and I'm only going to put 2 tablespoons of water in it. So I'm not diluting it as much as I did the first cup. And you could make more steps in between. You could actually dilute the original, so that's 2, by 1 tablespoon at a time, and you can get more values in between, but I'm only doing 3 values. So here's the second piece of fabric. Did that answer your question, Virginia? Here's the second piece of fabric, and I'm going to clamp it similar to the first piece. I'm going to clamp it off center. And when I'm using the paint sticks, I try to use the side that doesn't have any writing on it up against the fabric. So I'll just go ahead and clamp these on. And go with the dye here. There it is. So this has 4 tablespoons of dye and 2 tablespoons of water. So it's going to be stronger than the last one. Should be about twice as strong. And I'll just apply it like normal. And Virginia, if you have any other questions, or anyone else have any other questions about this, definitely pop it in the chat for me. Get in between. Okay, I'll turn it over to this side and make sure I really get in between on this side. When I first started dyeing, I did a lot of these exercises like this, and I definitely did more steps. I would do almost like 10 steps, 8 to 10 steps in between. And yeah, it uses a lot of fabric, but to me it was the learning. I'm really big on learning stuff, and I don't mind using my supplies if I feel like I'm learning something from it. And eventually I probably gave them all away. Okay, let's see how we're doing on the inside of these. Make sure that's good. Okay, it looks all good from the inside, so I'll set this aside. Move this out of the way. Okay, now for this last one, it's going to be the full strength mixture. And I'm just going to pour a little bit in this cup so that I don't contaminate the original mixture with soda ash. So even at 3/4 of a cup, I mixed up too much dye. I could have probably gotten away with half a cup of dye. The dyes do last a bit. I just don't do as much dyeing as I used to, so I'm trying to get more careful about how much excess dye that I mix up. So let's do this one. See, I got dye on it already. And I'm gonna set this off. Okay, I wondered when I was gonna do that. Surprised I haven't done it before now. I guess maybe it's a good thing I mixed up extra dye. Okay, don't be a klutz like me. Okay, so we recovered from that, and luckily I have enough dye left that I can pour into this cup. And this is the full strength. Okay, no more questions so far? Hopefully, if you have questions, my chat is working. And somebody just popped something in the chat. Let me know. So I want to make sure my chat is working. I was having trouble with it. Okay, I'll go inside. Turn this over. Okay, so we're almost done with this one. And then what I'm going to do is bring out the other two and put them on the tray side by side so we can see the difference even when it's wet. And it'll be the difference should be more pronounced when it's dry. Okay, let me push that out of the way and bring over the tray with all three of them on it. So I don't know how well this shows up on the camera, but you can see the difference between the strength of the dyes here. So we're going to put these three aside and move on to the purple color. Make sure I get my hands clean here. So again, I have 4 tablespoons of dye in each of these cups. And for the lightest one, I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of water. And for these, I'm going to clamp with a triangle. Try to get my hands as clean as I can. So this is the first cup we're using. I'm going to clamp this off center. And go ahead and apply the dye. So this is our light version, the lightest version. It's still going to be a pretty strong color because this is a pretty strong dye. Okay, it's almost done with this one. Just a little bit more on the insides. And this lightest version will be done, and I can set that aside. Pour some of this dye off. I'll set this one aside. And now I'm going to go for our medium value. There's 4 tablespoons of dye in this cup, and I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of water. So we'll be diluting it just a little bit, but not as much as the first one. And I'm going to clamp this off center just like I did the other one. I got my clamps. Okay, now just apply the dye like we normally do. So this is going to be our medium value. It's coming along pretty good. And just make sure I got everything in between here. And I think that one looks good. So I will set this one aside, and then we will move on to the final one, which will be our full strength color. And actually I have to get that one out of the soda ash. So let me step away for just a second and get this one out of the soda ash. And now I will clamp this one off center like the other two. Had to root around in my clamp box. Got just enough clamps today. You notice this time I didn't pour that into the cup while I was doing that because I didn't want to spill it again. So, final one, the full strength one. And okay. It's Angie's Klutz Day. I hate to say it, guys, but this is how I am on a normal day. I just, so far, have been lucky and haven't done it on camera. But I am a walking klutz. So you guys got to see me, the real me. Almost did it again. Okay, almost done with this one. I like to hurry up before I spill the rest of it. Just making sure the inside of the folds look good. And that's it. I'm going to quit while I'm ahead before I spill any more. And let me bring all three of these together so you can see what they look like. So here are all three values of the purple or the violet, and that's it. I will set these aside and give me a minute. You know, it is my least favorite color, Virginia. So maybe that's got something to do with it. You notice I didn't spill the orange, which is one of my favorite colors. I don't know. Maybe it's subliminal, huh? But truly, that's the way I am on a daily basis. So my husband doesn't let me in the kitchen with knives because I usually end up cutting something I'm not supposed to cut. But that's it. So we created the three values of two different colors. We started with a full strength die, which is I made 3/4 of a cup using 3/4 of a tablespoon or teaspoon of dye. And for the lightest value, I did a 1-to-1 ratio of dye to water. The second value, I did a 2-to-1 ratio of dye to water. So 2 parts dye. Yeah, I think that's 2 parts dye, 1 part water. So 4 tablespoons of dye, 2 tablespoons of water. They can hear. My brain isn't working. And then for the darkest value, we used the dye full strength. So tomorrow morning before we come on, I will have these washed and rinsed out so you could see the final results. But that's pretty much it for today. For next week, I'm thinking of using these same colors and doing some darker shades. So adding gray to the mixture to darken the color and tone it down a bit. What do you guys think about that? Do you have any preferences on that? I was thinking of using the same colors so we can compare the results, compare creating a tint versus creating a tone with the gray. So let me know what you think about that. And if I could get you guys to do me one favor, if you could go back to the replay on YouTube and just leave me a comment. It helps with the algorithm and helps get my videos out there in front of more people. My channel has been growing because of you guys coming to the live stream, so I really appreciate that. But if you could go back on the replay and just drop me a comment, and that would really help the channel continue to grow and reach more people, because I really enjoy doing this and reaching out and connecting with people and sharing what I know with them. So I appreciate you being here, and I hope you enjoyed today's stream and learned something from it, which is the main purpose for me, is for you to learn something that you can use in your work. And if you did, go back to the replay and hit that like button and leave me a comment, okay? So, unless we have any other questions, I think that's it for me. It looks like I can't put anything in the chat anymore. This won't let me put anything in. Okay, there we go. It's just a little bit of a delay. Good, Virginia. I'm glad you like that idea. I think it would be a little interesting to see the differences between, we've got the original colors from last week. Then we'll have the 3 different tones, or tints rather, by adding white to it or more water. And next week we can do tones by adding gray. So unless we have anything else, any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Don't want to take up too much of your time, but I really do appreciate you spending the morning with me. Okay? And it's not letting me post anything in the chat, but thank you guys, and I hope to see you tomorrow where we'll take a look at these fabrics.